Hi, Phil Aston here from Now Spinning Magazine with an album review and a DVD review. And I'm doing this at the time of doing this, and this might date this video a little bit, but I actually think it will work well for what comes sometime into the future, so you don't make sure you don't miss what else this is I'm going to talk about. But at the time of filming this, I'm doing it on the eve of interviewing Steve Hackett, former guitarist from Genesis. And to say I'm excited would be an understatement. I'm also incredibly nervous at the time of filming this. But hey, it's just the way, it's just where I am in this journey that is Now Spinning Magazine. So, Steve Hackett. This is his latest in a line of live releases where he's revisited classic Genesis albums. And this, is covered. So many of them just be Genesis revisited and then selling them by the pound and then seconds out. And of course, this, the latest one, which is Foxtrot at 50. Plus Hackett highlights. So there are kind of like tracks from his solo career in there as well, recorded and filmed live in Brighton. And it's absolutely stupendous. Steve Hackett plays with such emotion, and the lines are so melodic. He's an incredible technical player, self-taught, but so much classical influence in his playing. The tapping, of course, which many of you probably still think it's all about Eddie Van Halen. But Eddie was watching and listening to Steve Hackett years ago when he was doing that. Steve Hackett doesn't play with a pick, it's all with the fingers. The closest person I can put Steve Hackett next to is Jeff Beck, because when you watch him play and the way he uses tremolo arm is in such a creative way, very Jeff Beckish, and also the way that Steve Hackett has never got to the top of the mountain of his playing capabilities and just stayed there. He's constantly going further and further and pushing himself, and his technique and his playing and his music, always pushing forwards. There were, there were classical album releases just on acoustic guitar. There were, sometimes his playing is like full-on heavy metal and savage use of the tremolo arm, and other times it's so gentle. It's like a whisper, all within the music he plays, and it's all within this 2CD DVD set. The intro, Ace of Wands, The Devil's Cathedral, which is a track from his latest album, which I hope he has a chance to tour and really push that as well. Spectral Mornings, Every Day, two great tracks there as well. Amanda Lehman joins him on guitar on those. Tower Struck Down, Basic Instincts, Camino Royal, and Shadow of the Hierophant, which is, he plays a lot from his first solo album, but it sits here really well because he'd started work on that track when he was actually recording Foxtrot. So they are joined at the hip in many ways. But then we have Foxtrot in its entirety, which Genesis never did. Watch of the Skies, Timetable, which is a wonderful song that is kind of like overlooked with everything else that's on there. But here it is. Get 'Em Out by Friday, Can Utility and the Coastliners, Horizons, which is a wonderful little acoustic interlude, and then the song that you probably want to know all about, which is Supper's Ready. I always felt that live Supper's Ready really came to its own. The studio version on Foxtrot actually didn't gel with me that much. It was the version on Seconds Out that really did. But this version, his guitar solo towards the end, all of the members of this band are like telepathic wizards. The way they all interplay with each other, they are just all of them at the top of their game, and they really, really are. Let's go and see where it says who played what and where. The package itself is 3 discs. There's no booklet with it, which would have been nice. But there again, you've got a BluRay disc, so does it really matter? Roger King on keyboards. And who else is on here? We've got Rob Townsend on saxophone, woodwind, and James Reynolds on bass guitar, plays a Rickenbacker bass as well. Absolutely superb. and Craig Blundell on drums, and Nad Sylvan on vocals, who channels Peter Gabriel really, really well. But Roger King's keyboards is absolutely fantastic. On the Devil's Cathedral, the opening keyboard salvo is like is sent my cats running under the settee. It's like pure cathedral sized organ. It's just absolutely fantastic. Anyway, I was on Supper's Ready, wasn't I? The interplay here between the keyboards and the guitar is just fantastic, and it's just, the music is complex and it's rich and it's deep and it's vibrant. But as I was saying, Steve's guitar solo reimagined towards the end of this has got every part of his technique is poured into this, and nothing in it is about showing off, gaining points or technique. It's emotional, it's connected. It really is just beautiful, and it's so well filmed. The camera work is, the musicians are able to do their stuff without feeling like they've got a camera in their face. You can see a few GoPro cameras here and there, but it sounds amazing. I loved every minute of it. It's a really long concert, but what would be my favourite track? This Fifth is on there as well, and then Los Endos. And there's a great documentary at the end where all the band members talk about what they feel about the gig, go through some really kind of detailed stuff about the kind of equipment they use, etc., which is really interesting. And Steve's there with his wife Jo as well, talking about the gig and how many times they played Brighton, what it means to them, etc. But Los Endos, when it starts with a drum solo, which is really good as well. In case you're thinking, oh God, a drum solo, it's really good. And it goes into full heavy metal, full progressive metal, jazz fusion mode. Really, it's so, it is obviously Los Endos from Shook of the Tail, but it's also Los Endos from now, in the way that Steve Hackett would do it. And I think Steve Howe tripped off of my lips then, thinking about other guitarists that kind of are like Steve Hackett. I guess it's because I'm thinking Blackmore, Page, Gilmour, even Iommi they were on the side of the road that was kind of came from the blues, and you got Robert Fripp and Steve Howe and Steve Hackett came from the kind of classical, kind of almost like jazz world. But I think that whereas Fripp and Howe have remained kind of in their world, Steve Hackett has kind of moved across all of them. He can play heavy metal, and the way he uses a tremolo arm and the speed of his runs, and he's doing all this with his fingers, again the Jeff Beck element, but he can also bring in the most gentlest of classical stuff. And that's why I feel on Los Endos we go from this absolutely intense prog metal jazz fusiony bit, and then we go to that part of Los Endos where, for me, I always envisioned where I was living in Birmingham at the time, of almost coming up a hill to look at the most beautiful horizon view in the world, and down below would be the ocean or something. And it's that part of the music when it goes up to the top and everything just kind of rolls over, and that main motif and melody comes out. It does that, and as I'm telling you that now, there are shivers going down my spine, just thinking about it. But it is absolutely fantastic. So that is Steve Hackett, Foxtrot at 50 and Hackett Highlights live in Brighton, 2CD and Blu-ray set in 5.1, immaculate sound, and it sounds great, obviously in normal stereo for people with 2 ears as well, but absolutely brilliant, highly recommended. So I shall put a link into this soon, which will take you to the interview that I'm doing with Steve to talk about this release. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for listening and watching and telling everyone you've ever met about Now Spinning magazine, as more and more people seem to find me and it and us here. So thank you again. Remember, music is the healer and the doctor, and keep spinning those discs Subscribe, ring that little bell, become a patron if you can, or a YouTube member, and I shall see you on my next video.